have some questions.
Yeah,
Some
that's
of them that we didn't ask Caroline yesterday.
Okay.
But generally, we just wanted to find out just what you do and
Yeah.
how garden falls under sustainability in university in general.
Okay, so you probably know about all the history of the garden and how it came about.
Mm-hmm.
So we had our Water at Leeds research strand won a gold at the RHS Flower Show for their sustainable garden. And at the time, we were looking at putting a garden on campus, like an allotment garden. Dennis, the guy who's in charge of the facilities, decided that what we should do is probably bring that idea back to campus.
Mm-hmm.
So, is it working? And so that was the idea, basically, that we could take that concept and bring it back to campus. And that area down by the Roger Stevens building was not used. It was just derelict, really, but also on a roof, so it's very difficult to do anything. It's also next to a grade 2-star listed building, so it's very difficult to be allowed to do things with the council. So we had to, the university spent quite a lot of time negotiating that with the council to get things moving, really. It took quite a long time, and back in those days, there was lots and lots of people involved. So the student union were involved, academic staff were involved, estates guys were involved, lots of different people. When it was actually finished, there was never an agreement put in place, really, but it was kind of expected that the guys who run Barden Grange at the student union would look after the edible spaces in the garden. But and that was sort of the expectation, but nothing was ever formalised. So when that happened, the Sustainability Service had to sort of take ownership and sort of direct that, and that's kind of where I got brought in. So up until that point, I didn't really have much influence, but then after that point, we kind of agreed that we needed a structure to manage the garden, because the point of the garden was to create an edible space for everybody, but also to create a visually pleasing site. To implement lots of different sustainability ideas, so everything from the edibles right through to the permeable footpaths, the raised beds, the loads of different things in there, rainwater harvesting, all that sort of stuff was all sort of incorporated into it, but then also a mechanism to allow students to learn and teach more. So the space was meant to be designed in a way that allowed students to do projects in there, so like yourselves doing a project, but actually also we had research pods that allowed students to do small scale projects. So you might want to try different types of soil or something like that, and all those kind of things. But actually more than that, the idea was that the garden would be a place where people could try out ideas on a small scale, with the idea that then that could be scaled up to a bigger scale. And that's why there's loads of little things going on in the garden. So like you might see in the biochar composter in the corner, it's sort of in the corner by the sign, there's a big black bin behind.
Yeah, we saw that.
Well, that's an academic project run by engineering, and they're using biochar to try and speed up the composting process. And that's one of the research projects. We've got students looking at we had some students that were looking at things like the aesthetic, so the visual look of it all, but also the way the wildflowers were growing. Because one of the challenges we face on campus is that in an urban site, it's very difficult to get wildflowers to grow in the way that you'd want them to, because you've got to keep it looking amazing, but actually all year round. And how do you do that when wildflower meadows don't work that way? So what we had to do was use the garden as a bit of a test bed to see what we could do. We also said that in the garden we weren't going to allow people to spray any nasties on there, but also that we wouldn't allow them to dig it over. So from a grounds point of view as well, that made that quite a challenge, because you couldn't just spray it to get rid of all the weeds or whatever. You had to be creative, get people in there actually digging stuff out. So a couple of students were working on that and actually came up with an action plan for us, and we can use that to look at some of the bigger wildflower areas we have on campus. Now we can manage them now as a result of that. So that's kind of what we're doing. So that garden provided that sort of idea that then got taken one step further. And so the idea is now that our management of the campus can be influenced by the garden, if you see what I mean. So it's lots of little ideas like that also the garden was designed to do. And then, yeah, on top of that, you've kind of got the day-to-day maintenance of it that the estates guys do and the grounds team do. So the little cut grass areas, the wildflower meadows, the footpaths, all the sort of general maintenance, all of that is kind of covered as well. So there's lots of different people all having to work together to make it work. And so our role really is making sure that all of those people have got everything they need and that they're all getting along and working well together. So, yeah, that's basically my role.
I see.
Did that answer your question?
I think it did, yeah. Yeah, it's a lot of really
Yeah, I'm just
interesting
glad you're recording it
information.
because that would be quite a lot to write down.
Yeah, exactly.
I've done that before, haven't you?
Once or twice.
It's really impressive how like projects that students do on the garden has actually made an impact on like making changes in university.
Yeah, and that was always the intention.
Yeah.
So have you heard of the Living Lab?
No.
No. Okay, so we have a guy in our team whose job really is to look at where we can take, I suppose, problems, things. So when we're working on the campus, problems that face us as a university. So for example, food waste. You know, the university produces lots of food waste. At the moment, we send it to a waste company who send it for anaerobic digestion or composting, one of the two. It's a great system, but actually we could improve that. So one project was looking at how we could take the food waste from the refectory and do that on site. So the student union have bought a composter to do some work with that. The university were looking at a bigger project, so something that looked at anaerobic digestion, which is quite a big investment for the university. What that's actually developed into is lots of smaller projects for academics to do on a lab scale using the food waste that allows us then to make decisions about the way we manage the food waste.
Yeah.
So that's just one example. So the Living Lab really takes a problem that we have that we don't have an obvious solution for, apply academic thinking to that to create a solution that then we can then apply back to the campus. And that's kind of the concept of the Living Lab, and that's something we're trying to do a lot of, and the garden is kind of, I suppose, one of the flagships of that sort of project, really.
Is Living Lab, does it involve students or academics?
Yeah,
Okay.
students, academics, undergrads, postgrads, everything, yeah.
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 Okay.
I mean, there's a website, have a look.
Yeah.
There's a page on it.
Yep, we'll have a look. Right. And what do you do?
I'm the intern this year, so
Oh, okay.
I've been working alongside Mike in a lot of the stuff we do with biodiversity around campus. I also run my Green Impact and setting up a new scheme this year, but just thought I'd come and sit in.
Okay, I see. Yeah, I was just not sure.
No.
I'm just going to have a look at the questions I have here
That's all right.
to see if there's something. Is there something else you wanted to add about the garden? Something.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends what your outcome is. What do you need from
I
me?
think one of the things that I know that the team have talked about in the past is it's nice that we've kind of set it up. It was one of those things that we sort of initially started as a quite a strong point of work for us, and we've now had this sort of ability to step back and allow it to run itself, and it's part of the infrastructure now, and it allows the university to facilitate anything that we want to do around biodiversity on campus, and it's a really good point to use. But it's nice that we don't have such a hands-on approach anymore, and that it's kind of.
Well, we don't need to. I mean, with a lot of the projects we do, so like, are you aware of the campus beekeeping network? No. Okay. So there's 3 bee apiaries on campus that have got 2 or 3 hives in each one, and that was set up by myself a couple of years ago with the intention of getting staff and student volunteers to look after the hives. That all runs now. I don't need to go along to any of those. I just got it going and got people all connected and made those links. Now we've done that, we can step back and I still get involved, but actually I don't need to. It kind of runs itself. And like Rory says, that's kind of the same with the garden, really. I don't need to do very much. I just need to oversee it and make sure everybody's got what they need. Whereas before we have to have a much more hands-on. So Caroline in the garden was very much involved in the sort of making the decisions around what type of plants to use and using her skills really to actually make sure we got the right planting in there. But also, we'd had people like engineers involved to make sure that we didn't put too much soil on the ground, and all those sort of different people had to be involved early on. Whereas now we can step back and just make sure that everybody's doing what they should be doing. We have a sustainable garden manual that everybody kind of follows as a bit of a rule book. So we do kind of step back a little bit.
I think we know it's truly embedded in part of the infrastructure when we don't have to have that approach to it, and that we can just move back, and that's how we know it's really working part of the university.
Yeah, which is quite a nice feeling.
Sounds good. So one of the things we're going to cover in our article as well are these weekly sessions that they have at the garden.
Yeah.
So I think my question, we asked Caroline about it. I think my question to you would be like, how do you have any benefit from it as well, or is it more like beneficial to students as an experience?
Yeah, so from, I guess, a university point of view, it's very important that we are aware of how much we're engaging with people and how much we're influencing people. So the Sustainable Garden, every week, for example, Caroline and Kate, who work in there, record how many different people work in there. So it could be staff, it could be students, it could be members of the public that go in there. They record all that, they feed that back to me. I feed that back into my monthly report to my boss, who then reports that at an even higher level, and that kind of shows really that we are having an impact on the way that people think about food, about how they think about edible produce, all that kind of stuff. And so yeah, we do kind of capture that, and I think what does that answer your question?
It does, but also I would like to know, what is there any benefit like to you, like the fact that students come in every week, the fact that they plant something? Is it like, do you get benefit from it as well, or was it more
Me
like
personally,
to raise
or the
awareness?
service?
No, as in like the service.
Yeah, because I mean, from a facilities point of view, we have an obligation to make sure that the campus looks amazing all year round. We have an obligation to make sure that people have got the facilities and the things that they want on the campus, and that it kind of serves their purpose. And one of the things that's really quite important is that people's well-being on the campus and biodiversity. So from my point of view, I'm heavily involved in making sure that the work we do has an improvement on biodiversity in the Leeds area. So we have a biodiversity standard, we have a tool that's been made in-house that kind of records our performance with biodiversity, that looks at things like staff and student well-being, how secure people feel in these spaces, and also obviously the biodiversity benefits, so the benefits to the wildlife and all the rest of it. And that for us is very important, because that kind of, obviously with things like the capital programme on the campus, they're building lots of new buildings everywhere, we need to be able to make sure we don't lose that value, because one, we can't afford to lose any more wildlife in just generally, but also if people work in a place that they feel happy in, they're more likely to stay working there, they're more likely to feel better, have a better quality of life. So that garden allows the university really, and our service, to actually give, so our service and our facilities are able to give the university a campus and a site that makes people feel better. So it has a benefit for us, because it kind of makes people enjoy the site more and want to be here really. So it's very much about sort of making sure that the campus is managed in a way that people enjoy it, and we get that benefit definitely.
Good.
Is that okay?
Yeah, that perfectly answered the question. I think another one question we would have maybe would be about the challenges that you have with the garden, or like what the future has for it, any plans or...
I think the main challenge, and Caroline's probably told you this, is the roof. So it's on a roof. It's got a £20 million microscope underneath it, and if it leaks, we'll get in a lot of trouble. So really, we have to make absolutely sure that we don't put too much weight on there, because soil's heavy, that we don't water it too much, that the systems work for irrigation so that water doesn't hold on there, it has to be able to flow off the roof. So that is one of the biggest challenges, but that was always a challenge. That's one of the reasons it's done so well and that it's got so much attention, is because we've proved that you can do this on a roof, which people said couldn't be done. I think the other challenges are around things like the planning. So with the council, historically, if you'd have tried to do something like that next to a Grade 2 star listed building, it's very unlikely you'd have been allowed to do it. It's very difficult because people want to maintain a visual aesthetic, and in that area it's very much about brutalist architecture. So it's very much about those hard lines and lots of concrete and sort of very, I don't know, I find it quite dreary, but some people really like that sort of architecture. And what we've done is said we want to kind of put green in a space where green doesn't really fit with the style. And the council have let us do that because we found compromises. So that's been a massive challenge for it. Also, working together is a challenge, and it's a good challenge. I think you've got ourselves, and we've got our grounds team, we've got the student union, we've got academic staff, we've got students, we've got members of the public, we've got Bright Beginnings creche, take the little kids down there. All these different people are all able to work together in that space. That's great, but it also means that we have to think about how we manage that to make it work. So it is a challenge, and it's an ongoing challenge to make sure that everybody gets something out of it. And yeah, they're probably the main challenges I would have said. In terms of the future, I'm hoping we can keep it going. I think one of the other challenges is the soil, because historically, so when they first built the garden, they made a lightweight soil that was part sand, part vermiculite, part organic material. And what happened was that kind of stratified in the soil, so you ended up with all the sand at the bottom that was really compacted. The water wasn't getting through that, so we were getting lots of extra weight on the roof. So what Caroline's been doing over the past couple of years is taking out some of that old soil and replacing it in a way that allows us to manage the weight with these ridge and furrow systems. So that's I suppose one of the biggest challenges, but also in terms of the future, we have to be thinking about how that weight is redistributed to make sure that we don't do anything we shouldn't. I think beyond that, I think trying to encourage more living lab participation, trying to get students to use it more for research and linking into their research, that's what I would like to see more of. And also creating more awareness around the importance of edible spaces in cities and biodiversity in cities. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a real... So I don't know if you know this, but the Roger Stevens building, when they built all of those concrete buildings, the Roger Stevens building was designed to be the centre of that. The idea being that it would be a bit like the Pentagon. It was designed that no matter where you were on the campus, you could get to the main lecture building in a certain amount of time. It's 5 minutes or something. So they ran out of money when they were doing that. But now that is kind of right in the centre of the campus. So it is kind of a bit of a hub for the campus of biodiversity. So we kind of emanate out from that everything we do. So we can run events from there. We can coordinate activities from there, and then also it allows us to work closer. So one of my big biodiversity objectives is to create a wider network of understanding across Leeds around the importance of biodiversity. So working with Leeds City Council, Yorkshire Wildlife Trust, the RSPB, all the rest of those people, we're trying to create a bit of a network of people who want to create Leeds a more biodiverse city, or an urban centre of biodiversity. Now, a lot of these organisations deliberately avoid cities because it's difficult to actually do anything when they're building buildings all the time. So what I want to do really is see us take that as a challenge and find a solution for that. And the garden really is a bit of an exemplar of how we can start that journey. So I think what I want to do in the future is hopefully use the garden as a bit of a test bed for some of these bigger ideas we'll use across the city as well. Yeah. So I'm hoping we can, link up with like the council and share some of those practices.
Lots of good plans.
Yeah.
Do you have any plans of expanding or building another garden on campus?
Probably not.
No.
Not because it wouldn't be cool, but I don't think there's really a need. I think there's lots of other things we could be doing with the site. So the garden is essentially an allotment garden with lots of biodiversity and environmental enhancements, but it is meant to be a load of different ideas all put in one place. So the idea being, you could bring a school group from Hare Hills in Leeds that have no gardens, they just have a bit of concrete outside the house, and they could take the idea of the chimney pots and put that in their garden, or they could take another idea and do that in their garden. So it's meant to be a collection of all the best ideas you can think of to use in an urban garden in one place. So people are meant to take those ideas. So to replicate that, it's just doing more of the same. It's not really needed. However, we do want to improve and, where possible, have more edible spaces. Or like when we put new trees in, look at what the fruit varieties are that kind of work with grounds maintenance and things like that. So we've got lots of areas on campus where we've got fruit trees or edible borders and things like that. But in terms of replicating the garden again, there's probably not much point in doing that.
We are keen to create stepping stones throughout the university.
The
city of biodiversity. So there's areas where different animals and birds can move between, and there are hotspots throughout. The Roger Stevens pond is probably coming in as well. Next to Roger Stevens, that's becoming like a reeded area now. So we're trying to create more areas that have got green spaces all around campus.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I suppose really it's just taking, I suppose, some of the ideas from the Sustainable Garden, but the idea of these stepping stones is to create corridors for movement of species, but also to enhance the green space so that when people are walking between Headingley and the city, they don't just see loads of concrete in between, they see a bit of everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that was like everything we wanted to know.
All right, okay.
And it's really very useful, I think,
Okay.
together with what we got from Caroline
I
yesterday.
thought when you said, I thought it'd be a shame not to
Yeah.
capture some of the other stuff.
Yeah, exactly. I think will be like lots of information for a good article.
Yeah, yeah, great.
Thank you so much.
Well,
for
if you
your
could share it,
time.
it'd be great. It'd be great to.
Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
share it once we've like. It's probably going to be next week when we
Yeah.
submit it. So
Okay.
I'll send you a link to it. Hopefully you'll be happy with it.
Yeah, I'm sure we will.
We are still
Yeah,
just
yeah.
students. We'll do our best.
No, that'd be fabulous.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely, get torn apart.
I was going to say some of the best stuff we've done.